championships. Who knows if the Warriors are ever going to get back to that stage where he can get that, finals MVP to pad his resume. I'm not knocking his greatness. Some guys just aren't clutch. Like I said, with 14 seconds left on the shot clock, Curry's able to, hoist a 35-footer and drain it. But then when it comes to the game being on the line, he hasn't proven that he can make these shots. Now, look, Steph's only 30 years old. He's still got a couple of great years left. And who knows? I mean, Clay could get healthy, re-sign, ditto for Durant, and they could be right back there.
Yeah.
We don't know how the next month's going to go with the NBA. But, I think a lot of the consensus is that, KD's leaving. We don't know what Clay's going to be. He might not come back till March. But if the Warriors do bring Clay back and they do re-sign KD, they have a chance to be back next year. They need a deeper bench. They need another point guard who can shoot and take some of the, pressure off of Steph. But the regular season is going to be a slugfest next year in the Western Conference. And there's no guarantee the Warriors even get a top 4 seed, let alone a playoff spot.
Yeah.
You got the Nuggets on the rise, the Blazers on the rise. We'll talk about the Lakers later with Anthony Davis, obviously. So much is happening in the West. We don't know what the Rockets are going to look like. So the Warriors are not guaranteed anything. And the fact that they made 5 straight NBA finals is an incredible accomplishment. But, what does this mean for the Warriors? This could be the end. And I know a lot of Warriors fans don't want to hear it. Draymond Green was very snippy. He said, look, people think this is the end of us, but, we'll be back. There's no guarantee in sports. I mean, no one picked the Raptors to win the NBA championship. No one expected KD to rupture his Achilles and Klay Thompson to tear his ACL in the same series. That's why you play the games, Ben. These prognosticators get paid to make predictions, but at the same time, they're not putting the ball in the hoop. So it's why you play.
No, I think you're right. And, at the end of the day, I mean, what this means for the Warriors is that there's at least a bump in the road here. I mean, when we look, there's a couple things that are coming up. I mean, you alluded to them, but first of all, I mean, I think all signs are pointing to Klay Thompson remaining on the Warriors. I have not seen or heard anything that he's going to leave, and I think he'll be back, but I don't think Durant's coming back. I mean, there's been some stuff coming out, and I mean, the one that really got me, and I'm not the only one noting this, but Jay Williams, who does the boardroom with Rich Kleiman, who is the agent for Durant, came out and was very, very critical of the Warriors and their handling of Durant, which was a very interesting thing to see because he's obviously very close with Durant, and it's hard to imagine that he would come out and say all that if Durant didn't feel that way and he planned to go back to the Warriors. So I thought that was a really interesting and possibly telling thing. I don't think Durant's coming back. I really don't. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I don't think he's coming back. And after next year, Draymond Green's contract expires. And so they're going to have some decisions, Jason. I mean, especially if Klay Thompson, with this ACL injury, we don't know when he's going to be back next year. So all of a sudden, the Warriors have a lot of decisions to make in a very short time, Jason.
Well, they're going to give away, $350 million in guaranteed money to guys like Clay and KD when, they have 2 of the worst sports injuries an athlete can suffer. I mean, a ruptured Achilles, Durant's always going to be a great scorer and a great shooter, but he may have lost that athleticism that put him above most other players in the world. I mean, the torn ACL, I think Clay has a good shot of coming back. He's relentless in his work ethic, and I think he'll be fine. But if you're, Joe Lacob and you're saying, well, am I going to give out $350 million in guaranteed money to these 2 guys? Durant's eligible for the Supermax. Obviously, Clay is not, but that's still a ton of money.
Yeah.
And then what? You're paying these guys upwards of $50 million to rehab at your new arena? I mean, these are some very tough decisions we're going to see over the next couple weeks because so many teams are in position to sign guys away more than ever before. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for sure. I mean, we have to, I guess, give kudos to the Warriors for fighting. They went down in 6 games. They were 1 shot away from forcing a game 7, despite all their injuries,
and
despite all their adversity.
Oh, my God.
The free throws, too. They were right there.
The non-Steph and Clay free throws were just atrocious. I think they were 5 for 14 outside of those 2. And the Clay injury, very underrated plot line of this, but the Clay injury cost them 2 points because they put Clay back out and then they have to foul when they're in the bonus in the third quarter. So they just hand Toronto 2 points, which you got to think at the end of that game they probably wanted back.
They had to, though, Ben. I mean, no one knew it was the ACL. I thought watching that it was like a hyperextended
Oh yeah.
knee or something like that. So when he was able to run out there, probably in a ton of pain, but his adrenaline was flowing so hard that, he had to come out and make those free throws. So at least he had eligibility to get back into the game. But then when he tried to run back on defense, they all knew something was really wrong and they had to burn a foul. What were they
for
going to
sure.
do?
I just mean those really hurt them at the end. I mean, at the end of the game, I mean, it's a close game before that Curry shot, and all of a sudden you think, man, those 2 points, and then all the points that they left at the line really, really hurt. But no, I completely agree. It was close here. I mean, I want to ask you this question, Jason, which is, have you ever seen a finals like this? I can't think of, even in other sports, a finals where clearly the two best players in the series are both likely to leave their teams, and where we see it kind of a finals that's almost as dominated by the games as it is by the free agency to follow the games. I mean, obviously Kawhi and Durant, they both could leave their teams, Jason. I mean, and I think if you're talking Vegas odds here, probably the odds are in your favor that they will leave the teams. Have we ever seen this before? And what do you make of this, and what's going to transpire as free agency kind of rolls in?
Well, the first thing that comes to my head is the NBA we knew growing up and why we got into the sport in the first place is gone. You got the Tim Duncans, the Kobe Bryants, the Paul Pierces, the Dirk Nowitzkis, guys that put in 15, 16 years with a team. That those days are over. I mean, you'll have some cases, Steph's probably a lifelong Warrior, but other than that, how many of these players have changed teams? LeBron, KD, now Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, Chris Paul, all Jimmy Butler, all these guys have moved teams. It is a star-driven league where players want to team up, form a super team for a 3-year title window, then blow it all up and go elsewhere. But if you're Kawhi Leonard, I think it has to be extremely difficult to leave the situation that he's in. I mean, are the Raptors favorites next year with Kawhi? Probably not, because you have to factor in the 29 other teams and who's getting this stud in free agency and whatnot. So I'm not going to say this was a fluke championship, but they're not perennial title contenders. They got one more shot at this thing. Lowry, Gasol, and Ibaka are all expiring contracts next year. So if you're Kawhi, do you want to sign long-term and then go through a rebuild? For a chance at maybe one more ring? Do you sign a 1-year deal in Toronto and run it back? Will the front office accept that? And then see where they end up next year and they have all that money coming off the books? Because the way that Van Vliet and Siakam are playing, they're going to command pretty decent-sized deals once they hit the open market. So it's a tough decision. I mean, they're celebrating their championship, and now they have to think about the Kawhi Leonard decision in less than 2 weeks. So it's going to be very interesting what Kawhi decides to do, but he's a smart guy. He didn't ask to go to Toronto, but he made the best of it, worked his tail off, won his second ring, and now Kawhi gets a chance to dictate his future. I think there's a good chance he leaves, but it's going to be really hard when you have a whole country saying, we're going to give you free food for life, and here, take this free lawyer, and, come and, ride my horse if you'd like to. Don't think of it in the way you're thinking of it. It's just a horse, Ben. But what I'm saying is he's getting all these things, promises of riches and all these things from the Raptors. It's going to be hard to walk away from, but if there's a player that has the moxie and the personality to do it, it is Kawhi.
I'm not sure personality is usually the first thing people think of when they think of Kawhi, but I think you're right.
Did you see that he did the laugh parade, by the way?
He's great. And I think there's a really good chance he stays at this point, if only to stay for like a 1+1 type deal. Where is he going if he leaves? I guess the Clippers have been the big team, but it's just tough for me. I mean, at this point, with the way that free agency is playing out, I don't think the Clippers can put a team as good as the one he has around him next year. And if you're Kawhi, I think that's kind of what you have to be playing for, is play to get on a team that's as good as the one you're on or better. And I don't see any way he can do that. I don't see any destination he can go to unless somehow the Sixers do something or one of those teams makes some kind of crazy move, I don't know how he can find a better situation. And so if I'm
But
him, I
it's
might
not a
stick
good
around.
long-term situation, though. It's a great situation for next year. But then what? Lowry's getting close to the back end of his prime. Same with Marc Gasol. Same with Serge Ibaka. Ujiri's not going to re-sign all these guys for max deals
You're absolutely
just
right.
for a year window, and then everything falls apart, and they're stuck with these bloated contracts in the dreck of the Eastern Conference. It's great. First franchise NBA championship. The Raptors are no longer on that list of NBA teams that have never won it all. Their names will forever be on that trophy and attached to this year, and they deserved it. But now it's a business, so they have to think of
Yeah.
what's best for them. Kawhi has to think about what's best for him, and then the organization and player will come to an agreement, or they won't. Same thing with Kevin Durant. Does he want to rehab in a brand new arena, or is he so mad at the Golden State training staff that he wants to take his talents elsewhere and get paid $160 million for 3 years of service? Like I said, it's going to be very interesting. I think next week's show will be a big free agency preview because June 30th is the first day that
Yeah.
teams can talk to restricted free agents. So it's going to be a busy few weeks here at Baseline Jumper. Before we switch gears, I just want to talk about the parade for a minute because I didn't get to do my zero of the week. And look, the parade looked like a great time. Kawhi looked like he was having fun. Drake was out there. Marc Gasol was chugging wine. But then it had to go and get ruined by a select few. And this is just like last week's show where we said the Raptors fans were wrong for cheering the Durant injury. Now there's a select few firing off gunshots at the biggest championship parade in the history of the city. And that's just
Yeah.
wrong. So for those select few Raptors fans, the ones that cheered Kevin Durant's injury, now the ones, shooting and wounding innocent people at a parade, you're my zero of the week, and you're probably my zero for life. I don't want to end this finals talk on a poor note, but I just have to get that out there. Thankfully, no one lost their life, but it's
It's
completely
crazy.
avoidable. I
It's
know.
crazy too. I don't know what people are thinking. I don't know why you're even bringing a gun to a parade in the first place. But before we get off Toronto, I want to get your prediction here. So my prediction is that Kawhi will stay with the Raptors on a 1+1, kind of keep his options open for next year where he might have a better situation. What do you think Leonard ends up doing?
So I like what you're saying, but for the sake of argument, because I don't know if the jury's going to want to do a 1+1, so I'm going to say he leaves. I think there are
Ooh.
several teams still in the running for his services. You have the Clippers. I think the Lakers are off the table now. The Knicks, I think he's got too many ties to the Nets for him to ignore. Sean Marks, Tiago Splitter, Uncle Dennis is in the area. So there's so much. Kawhi, I mean, where was Kawhi last year when he left the Spurs rehabbing? He was in New York City. So these things can't be ignored. And if the Sixers lose Butler and Tobias Harris, they'll have money to sign Kawhi Leonard. And that, I think, makes the Sixers look like a completely different team with Simmons, Embiid, and Kawhi. So he's got options. I'm going to say he leaves, signs a long-term deal somewhere, and stays there because, going through the trade last year probably was not something that Kawhi Leonard enjoyed. So I think he's going to want to find a permanent home. He'll forever be endeared to the hearts of Toronto, but I think he's gone.
Yeah. And the other guy who's going to be inextricably tied to him this offseason is going to be his counterpart in the finals, which was Kevin Durant. Obviously, Durant misses some of the time with what was termed a calf strain, and then subsequently has an Achilles tear, and now will likely be out 10 to 12 months for recovery, which means the earliest we will see him, Jason, will be next season for, at best, the playoffs, at worst, possibly late in the NBA playoffs, like the NBA Finals, and maybe not at all. And so now there's a major question of what Durant's going to do. And there have been a lot of options floated, Jason, between will he opt into his deal with the Warriors and just stay on and basically rehab on their dime? Will he take a 4-year deal going somewhere else? Will he take a full max somewhere? Will he stick with the Warriors on a full max? Around and around we go. I think we've seen a little bit of clarity here, which is that it feels like it's a narrowed down, Jason, to a 3-team race. And I think the Warriors are a distant third in that calculus. It seems like the consensus is that Durant is going to be thinking somewhere in New York, whether Brooklyn or the Knicks. And the reporting so far has indicated that that is the way that it's trending. As I said, I do feel like that Jay Williams piece or that Jay Williams note about the Warriors could be very telling to how he's